Hey everyone, this is my pet leech. Occasionally leeches come out of the water like this, but they always return to it. And now you can see the leech doing some paddle swimming really fast across the aquarium. I'm currently keeping this in a 2-gallon aquarium. You can see the leech is actually very colorful. This is a medical leech. I bought this from a medical supplier. Usually they only sell them by the 100, but I contacted them saying I wanted to keep one as a pet, so they agreed to sell me this one. Medical leeches can be found in the wild, but they're actually an endangered species because back in the 1800s, they were overhunted for medical use, and you can actually get a pretty hefty fine if you're caught taking one, up to $50,000. This one here I got from a medical supplier, so this was never a medical leech. You can see they're very curious like an octopus, and they are escape artists. If they find any little hole, they will get out and dry up. This aquarium is almost completely sealed off, but a little bit of air is still able to get around the seam. In the back, there's these small gaps where you can put glass separators. I had to tape that shut because until the leech gets a little bit bigger, there is a chance the leech could escape. This leech fully spread out is about 4 inches right now, but they can more than double that size. They have 2 suction cups they use to get around, kind of like an inchworm. They have 3 jaws they use to bite into you, and it kind of makes a symbol looking like the Mercedes symbol when they bite you, that triangle pattern. Every segment the leech has actually has its own piece of brain, so they have 32 brains. I leave it like this, a lot of airspace in there, and this bigger gap also encourages the leech to keep coming back into the water. Leeches like to live in very dark places. They are nocturnal. When I'm not filming, I keep this aquarium in a very dark place, out of sunlight. They like to live between 40 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, they would hibernate deep below the mud. This leech is very active right now because a few minutes ago I put my hand into the water and they can detect the CO2 coming from your skin. The leech is very active, looking for me to feed on. This leech, because it was born in captivity, there's no chance of it having parasites. One from the wild might have parasites, and if you were to get one on you from the wild, there's a chance of it having parasites. If you allow it to feed on you and fall off naturally, there's no chance of getting parasites. But if you try yanking it off, burning it, or putting salt on it, they will actually throw up into the wound, and if there's anything in their stomach, they will throw it up into your wound and you will have it. When they bite you, they give you an anticoagulant, which is actually a blood thinner. They do that to thin your blood so it's easier to drink. And they also give you an anesthesia so you can't feel the bite mark. And when they detach from you, you have to put a good bandage on that because you will continue to bleed between 3 hours and a couple days because of that blood thinner. On average, it's about 10 hours. Really not a big deal. When the leech is attached to you, it actually gives you a blood detox. Some drug companies are actually looking into using leech saliva to create some arthritis and pain medications, but that's still in the works. With good care, they can live up to 10 years, this species. There are other species that can live up to 40 years. This kind of leech, on average, will drink about 1 teaspoon of blood, which really is not a lot. Some websites say you can put on your house pet, which I think is just cruel, because when it detaches, the wound will continue to bleed for a few hours or even days, which is something you should not be putting an animal through on purpose. They are actually related to the earthworm. Leeches aren't parasites, they are parasitic. There is a difference. They will shed their skin about once a week, and it will be floating around and you have to take it out of the tank. They do not transmit any diseases, although they may carry parasites from their previous host. All leeches have their own type of parasites that they cannot transmit to humans. After they're done feeding on blood, it's a good idea to drop the level of the aquarium down to like a ½ inch so they can still be wet, but they can't paddle swim, because paddle swimming they could actually throw up. I don't have a filter on here because they could actually get sucked up. I bought this tiny USB pump that I considered using on the tank, but I don't think I will because they actually like stagnant water. That little pump I bought has a screen that they couldn't get sucked up into, and also the wire on the pump is so small so it could easily go up through the top. This leech for the past few days has been very inactive, mostly burrowing beneath the gravel. If they are desperate, they will actually go after other things in the environment, like frogs. Most leeches in the world do not drink blood. There are over 700 known species, and only a handful, about 15, will actually consider drinking blood. Most eat things like worms, small creatures, decaying plant matter. I have been doing culvert cleaning. I have been going through swamps my whole life for years. I've never actually been bitten by a leech, so this will be my first time ever getting bitten by a leech. Most of the time, my leech here likes to hide under the gravel. Leeches are actually very good mothers, and they watch over their eggs and care for their young. Certain species will actually hunt down worms for their babies. They are hermaphrodites, just like snails. They have both female and male reproductive organs. What I'm about to do, please don't try to repeat this at home, because if I was to get an infection for any reason, I have a doctor I could go to. These leeches are very colorful. They have a lot of red and stripes. This is a unique pet. I think it's actually pretty cool to watch it swim around the tank. And when you're done feeding a leech, it can actually go a long time without eating, sometimes even up to a year. But I plan on feeding this guy every 6 months, so here I go. This will be the first time that I actually get bit by a leech. I'm going to put it on right now, and this leech, it's taken a very long time to actually attach. They're very hesitant their first time feeding. If you don't want to see blood, please shut the video off right now. Okay, the leech was on me for about 70 whole minutes, which is actually above average for a leech. They usually stay on for under 60 minutes, but it's possible for up to 3 hours. Now you can see the blood starting to come out of the wound, so I have some hydrogen peroxide that I'm now treating it with. I know that my arm is still wet. I'm just putting this bandage on right now temporarily. I'm going to replace it in a few minutes. I just want to get something on that immediately. I'm going to treat it again. Now I'm making sure all the hydrogen peroxide's off my hand before I pick up the leech and put it back into the tank. This leech has grown a lot in size. I figure it drank about 5 times its body weight at least. Probably should have weighed it with an gram scale like they use for measuring out drugs. That would be a good idea to buy in the future to see how much the leech actually drinks. When a leech goes to the bathroom, which it will pretty soon, probably in the next week or so, it will turn the entire aquarium water like this reddish brown, which pollutes it, so it'll have to be cleaned immediately. I just put the leech back in, and you see how it's squirming around? This is why it's a good idea to drop the level of the aquarium water to prevent them from paddle swimming, so they don't throw up their food. So this will take about 3 months for this leech to digest that blood meal. So this leech can go 8 months or even 1 year now without having anything to eat. I will continue to change the water in this tank once a week and remove any molts that the leech will shed. Now, when I said I'm going to drop the water level down to prevent paddle swimming, that's only temporary for a few days or about a week, just to make sure there's no throwing up. A leech doesn't have lungs or gills. They breathe through their skin, so you just have to make sure they're wet. They don't actually have to be in the water. If you saw in the tank, I put that rock in the middle so the leech has a place to actually get up. Right now you can see the leech is actually trying to burrow back under the rocks. I might actually add more gravel since the leech is bigger and wants to burrow, or maybe I'll just replace it with some sand to make it easier for the leech. So in my experience, this leech bite was almost completely painless. At the beginning, I could feel some small tingling and pokes. The pain was less than getting a shot at the doctor's office. You really didn't feel that much. During the whole thing, you could feel a few pricks here and there, but the anesthesia that the leech give actually does really help with the pain. They do that to try to prevent you from feeling it so they can get away with doing that. Now, that bandage I put on, this is about 10 minutes later because it's bleeding a lot from the blood thinner that the leech uses. So this is a bandage I'm going to put on that's actually for wounds. It's completely waterproof, so it's made to stop bleeding. This is about 7 hours later when it pretty much stopped. It took me about 24 hours to stop bleeding completely, but after those 7 hours, it was almost completely over. Here's some pictures. That's how small the leech was when I started off. Hope this video was interesting. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment.